How to Forgive Yourself. A Practical Path from Guilt to Inner Peace. Introduction. You are not the worst thing you've done. I want to start with something I need you to hear. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. Whatever you're carrying, whether it's what you've been rehearsing in your mind at 3 in the morning or what makes you flinch when things go quiet, you're not stuck there. You're not defined by that moment, and you're not out of reach of peace. But I understand that it's hard to believe right now. You didn't find this book by accident. Something inside you is weary, worn out from carrying a weight that no one else can fully see. You're tired of smiling through conversations while something inside you tightens. You're tired of getting close to joy only to pull back, as if you haven't earned it yet. This book was written specifically to evoke that feeling. I'm not here to give you a list of affirmations and then send you on your way. I'm not here to dodge the truth with soft, vague words. This is a real conversation about the raw, gritty, deeply human work of forgiving yourself. And it begins right where you are. I want to clarify something before we move forward, as this misconception has kept many people stuck for a long time. Forgiving yourself is different from just excusing yourself. Just because you did something doesn't mean it was okay. It doesn't mean the harm didn't happen, or that you're pretending it never did. It doesn't mean you've lost your moral compass, or that you're taking the easy way out. What it really signifies is that you've decided to stop letting one chapter of your story control every chapter that comes after. Guilt serves a purpose. When something inside us recognizes that we've acted against our values, guilt acts as a signal. It alerts us to pay attention. It reminds us that it matters that wasn't right. And that signal is important because it shows you care. But guilt was never meant to be a permanent place. It is meant to guide you toward reflection, responsibility, and change, and then let you move on. When guilt lasts longer than it should, it doesn't keep you honest. It only keeps you stuck. Here's what I want you to understand before we begin this journey together. The fact that you're still holding on to this pain that you can't quite let it go doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care about the impact of your actions. It means your conscience is still alive. It means you still value goodness. Those are significant issues. But caring isn't the same as punishing yourself forever. You have the power to decide when the sentence ends. We're going to get through this together, not in a rush, not with easy answers, but with honesty, with tools that genuinely help, and with the kind of compassion you probably offer everyone else in your life except yourself. It's time to implement a change. Let's begin. The burden you carry recognizing what you cannot forgive. There's something that happens when pain remains unnamed. It doesn't go away or fade quietly on its own. Instead, it settles in and becomes familiar, like background noise you stop consciously noticing, but that influences everything. It shows up in the jobs you don't apply for, the relationships you keep at arm's length, the dreams you quietly let go of without even realizing you've let them go. The way you hold your breath when something good begins to happen, bracing for the moment it all falls apart. And if you've been holding on to something you haven't forgiven yourself for, even for years, this probably feels familiar. The weight is constant. You stop noticing it as a burden. It just becomes how you move through the world, a little guarded, a little slower, a little less open to life than you once were. Before healing can begin, one thing must happen first. You need to give it a name. Avoid gentle, non-committal language. Don't say, "I made some mistakes," or "I carry a lot of guilt." That's not truly naming it, that's circling it. Real naming means pointing directly to the actual moment, the specific choice, the exact thing you still flinch from when the room quiets. Here's why naming is so important. You can't forgive what you refuse to face. And the story you've built around what happened, that's often where the deepest wound lies, not just in the action itself, but in what you interpreted it to mean about you. There's an exercise I invite you to try. You don't have to do it now while listening, but I hope you'll return to it. Draw a line down the middle of a page. On the left side, list the facts, just what happened, no adjectives or emotional labels. On the right side, write what you have been telling yourself it means about you. You might write, I didn't call my father before he died. I missed the chance to say goodbye. That's the fact on the left side. And then on the right, I am a selfish, terrible person who doesn't deserve love. When you see these two things side by side, the fact and the verdict, something often shifts. You start to notice the gap. The event is real, but the meaning you've assigned to it? That's not a fact. That's pain doing what pain does, turning I failed into I am a failure. Turning I was scared into I am weak. These are not the truth. They're the story guilt has created. And here's the hopeful part. If you wrote that story, you can rewrite it too. The difference between guilt and shame, this difference could be the most significant in the entire book. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am doing something wrong. Guilt, when we truly feel it, learn from it, and let it guide us toward repair, is healthy. It's a natural part of having a conscience. It pushes you to grow. But when guilt is never confronted, when it stays unspoken and unresolved, it turns into shame, and shame doesn't motivate change. Instead, it leads to silence, secrecy, and the deeply held belief that you're beyond repair. Shame is dishonest, and it thrives in secrecy. This is exactly why naming is important. When you say something out loud, even just to yourself, even just to a journal, even just in an empty room, you bring it out of the darkness where shame lives. You are saying, I see this, I know what this is, and I won't let it control my life from the shadows anymore. There's something else worth asking yourself kindly when you're ready. What guilt is holding you back? It might seem like a strange question, but many of us hold on to guilt because we believe it keeps us safe. We think, if I keep suffering, maybe I'll prevent others from suffering. If I keep feeling bad, maybe that shows I care. If I let go of this guilt, maybe I'll forget what I did, maybe I'll do it again. But guilt doesn't stop future mistakes. Reflection does. Guilt doesn't honor those we've hurt. Change does. And guilt doesn't show you care. The fact that you're here listening to this, willing to do this work, proves you care. You can start over, and you don't have to keep paying forever for something the best of you would never have chosen in the first place. The inner critic understanding the voice that won't let go. There's a voice most of us have heard for so long that we've stopped questioning whether it's true. It's the voice that appears when something goes wrong and says, of course you messed that up. It's the one that shows up uninvited when something goes right and whispers, this won't last, you don't deserve it. It speaks in absolutes, it never forgives, and it has never, not once, helped you grow. It has only ever made you smaller. This is the inner critic. Understanding it, where it comes from, what it believes it's doing for you, and why it gets louder exactly when you're trying to heal, is one of the most important steps in learning to forgive yourself. Here's the truth about where that voice originated. It once belonged to someone else. As children, we soak up the tones and reactions of those around us like sponges. If we grew up in environments where love was conditional, criticism was frequent, and emotions were something to be ashamed of rather than expressed, our young minds found ways to survive. We internalized those voices. We learned to criticize ourselves first, before anyone else could. We thought, if I beat myself to the punch, maybe I won't be blindsided. Maybe I'll stay ahead of rejection. Back then, that strategy seemed logical. It offered a kind of protection. But as time went on, what started as a way to survive turned into self-destructive behavior. That protection transformed into a prison. The inner critic isn't your conscience. It sounds similar to your conscience, that's what makes it so convincing. But your conscience gives advice. That wasn't right. Here's a better way. Your inner critic only condemns. You are not right. There is no better way for someone like you. Those are completely different things. They're not even similar. Naming and disarming the critic. The first step in reducing the critic's influence is surprisingly simple. Give it a name. I understand this might seem strange. Just listen. When the critic's voice completely merges with yours, you believe everything it says. You don't question it, you live it. But as soon as you identify it, that's the judge, or there's the drill sergeant again, you create a little distance. It becomes a voice, one voice, not the whole story. Then start paying attention to it. When does it show up? You might notice it appears not only when you failed, but also when you're on the verge of something good, when joy is within reach, when someone is getting close, or when you're about to take a risk that matters. The critic doesn't just attack your failures, it panics at your progress because your healing threatens its control. So when it gets louder, especially when you're starting to forgive yourself, that's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's a sign you're doing something right. Here's the shift I want you to make. Don't silence the critic that rarely works. The more you try to suppress a voice, the louder it tends to get. Instead, focus on learning to answer it. Don't argue with it. Don't give a long explanation. Just respond calmly, honestly, and from a place of greater grounding than fear. When the critic says, "You'll never change," your grounded voice responds, "Maybe not all at once, but I'm taking one step today." When it says, "You're disgusting," you respond, "I'm hurting, and I need care, not cruelty." When it says, "No one will ever truly forgive you," you reply, "That's fear talking. What matters right now is that I'm doing the work." These aren't affirmations, they're acts of reclamation. Every time you respond to the critic with something more truthful than what it offers, you weaken its hold. You push it to the back seat. You remind yourself, this is just one voice, and I am the one who gets to decide how the conversation ends. You're not just the voice in your head, you're the one who hears it, you're the one who questions it, you're the one who gets to choose what to believe. And maybe for the first time in a while, you're choosing something gentler. Embracing bold, yet gentle responsibility. Taking responsibility doesn't mean punishing yourself. That distinction, even though it sounds simple, has a significant impact. When most people think about confronting what they've done, they see it as a trial, a verdict, a sentence. They brace themselves for the pressure because somewhere along the way, they learned that accountability equals suffering. That if you stop feeling guilty, you're letting yourself off the hook. That guilt is the cost of staying decent. But living with guilt is not the same as accepting responsibility. Suffering is not the same as growing, and emotional imprisonment is not the same as integrity. Real responsibility, the kind that truly changes you, says something different. It says, yes, this happened. Yes, I was part of it. And no, I don't have to use this truth to destroy myself. I can accept this honestly without letting it define everything that comes afterward. The difference between blame and responsibility. Blame traps you in your worst moment. It takes one action and turns it into a lifelong judgment about your character. You made a mistake becomes you are a mistake. There's no way forward with blame, only a verdict that never changes. Responsibility is different. Responsibility says, yes, I did this. It had real consequences. And now I'm going to face it with honesty and with the belief that I can do better. Responsibility holds the truth of what happened without using that truth as a weapon. The root of the word actually reveals something. Responsibility. The ability to respond not with denial or self-destruction, but with intention. That's what we're building here. Honest responsibility starts with the facts. Avoid soft language. Don't hide behind vague phrases like, I wasn't at my best. What actually happened? What did you do or fail to do? What was said or left unsaid? This is where accountability begins. But then it goes a little deeper. Ask yourself, why did I make that choice? Not to justify it, to understand it. What were you feeling at that moment? What were you afraid of? What did you need, believe, or think you had to do to survive? Maybe you acted out of fear, loneliness, or immaturity. Maybe you were in pain and didn't know how to ask for help. That context doesn't erase the impact, but it roots the action in experience, and roots are where healing begins. Then, fully acknowledge the impact. Who was hurt? What was lost? Don't downplay it. Don't justify it. Feel the true weight of it. Not to punish yourself, but because you can't heal what you haven't fully acknowledged. And then the real question, what's next? What does repair look like? It might include an apology. It could mean changing a behavior. It may involve keeping a promise you once broke, or finally showing up differently than before. And if direct amends aren't possible, you can still choose to live differently. You can still embody what you've learned. That, too, is a way of making things right. There's a powerful exercise for this moment, the ownership letter. Not a letter full of explanations, not a letter you necessarily send, just a letter of truth. What did you do? What did it cost? What have you learned? Write it to yourself or to someone you hurt. Let it exist somewhere real outside your head, outside your body. It helps your nervous system release what it's been silently holding, and it reminds you, I can face this. I faced it, and I'm still here. You can be accountable and still be worthy. You can feel remorse without emotionally banishing yourself. Responsibility isn't cruelty, it's honesty, with a hand extended toward who you're becoming. Understanding the why trauma, triggers, and human fallibility. Before we continue, I want to say something I mean completely sincerely. You're not broken. I don't say that to make you feel better in the moment and then forget about it. I say it because it's true, and because believing that you are broken is one of the biggest obstacles to healing I've seen. You're not broken. You're someone who made a choice, maybe one that hurt others or even surprised you, but that choice didn't happen in isolation. It took place within a life, a context, a web of experiences, unmet needs, and old wounds that shaped how you learned to survive long before you had any say in the matter. Understanding why you did what you did, sitting with that question, honestly isn't about forgiving yourself. It's about seeing the full picture. Without that, you're judging your past self with your current understanding, and that's never fair. Behavior doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Even the choices we regret most come from somewhere. Perhaps they originate from trauma you never had the tools to process, or from exhaustion, loneliness, or being emotionally overwhelmed and reaching for the wrong thing. Maybe you were running from something. Maybe you were trying to protect something. Or maybe you were doing the only thing that felt survivable in that moment, even if, from the outside, it looked like something else entirely. Triggers and the nervous system. Your brain and body are shaped by every tough experience you've had, not just in metaphor, truly. When we face fear, loss, or abandonment, our nervous systems adapt to stay alert, to protect us, to prevent us from being caught off guard again. And sometimes, in a high-stress moment, your nervous system triggers a response rooted in the past, a tone of voice, a look, a feeling of being backed into a corner. Suddenly, you're not fully in the present, you're transported back to something old and frightening, and you react from that place, not from your core values, not from your best self, from something older and more panicked than that. That doesn't justify what happened, but it clarifies it. And understanding is where compassion begins. I want you to try something. Think back to the moment you're experiencing, not to relive it in pain, but to observe it with curiosity. What was happening around you? What were you feeling? What old fear or wound might have been triggered? What need was going unmet? Then ask, what was I really trying to achieve? Not just what I actually did, but what I was seeking beneath it all. Safety? Reassurance? A way to stop hurting? A sense of control in a moment that felt out of control? You don't need to excuse what happened to understand it. You don't need to downplay the impact to see the human being who caused it, the person who, in their own way, was also experiencing some pain. Guilt as a signpost, not a punishment. Guilt, when understood properly, acts as a signpost. It shows you when something isn't aligned with your values. Pay attention, that's important. But guilt is meant to be temporary. It highlights. Then it should let go of you, guiding you toward reflection, toward repair, and toward becoming someone who won't make that same mistake again. When guilt becomes part of your identity, when "I did something wrong" turns into "I am something wrong," it stops being helpful. Instead, it turns into a trap. And the bars are all made from things you keep telling yourself. So ask yourself, honestly, is the guilt I'm still carrying leading me anywhere useful? Or has it already served its purpose and I simply haven't let myself see that? You're not broken, you're growing. And you have the right to forgive yourself for past actions when you were hurting, confused, or unaware, while still holding yourself accountable to improve now. That's not a contradiction. That's what growth really looks like, rewriting the narrative with compassion. Two very different consequences occurred when you made the mistake you're still holding on to. One is the fact, the actual event, what took place, what was said, and what the consequences were. That part is fixed. It happened. It can't be changed. But the second thing, the story you've been telling yourself about what that event means, isn't fixed. It's something you've been building and reaffirming, often unconsciously, ever since. And that story? It's probably not the full truth. When guilt and shame shape our story, they tend to leave out important parts. They skip the context, the fear you felt, the goodness that was also inside you, even during your worst moments, the growth you've gone through since then, and the version of yourself today. Doing this work, rewriting your story, isn't about lying to yourself. It isn't about pretending the harm didn't happen. It's about finally telling the whole story, not just the part soaked in shame. The power of reframing. There is an easy yet impactful shift you can make now, switching from judgment to curiosity. Instead of, "Why am I such a terrible person?" try, "What was I feeling or afraid of in that moment?" Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" try, "What did I need that I didn't know how to ask for?" These questions aren't just letting you off the hook. They're pushing you to understand the person behind the action, and understanding is what drives real change. Think about someone you love dearly. Visualize them approaching you with the same guilt you're experiencing. They would have made the same mistake. They sit in front of you, embarrassed and frightened. What would you say to them? I'm guessing you wouldn't criticize harshly. I'm guessing you'd ask questions, listen carefully, help them understand how they got there, and gently remind them that one moment doesn't define their entire story. You would never speak to someone you love the way you speak to yourself. And yet, you are still offering others the grace you refuse yourself. Here's an exercise that truly changes how people perceive their past. I call it the compassionate rewrite. You revisit the memory that haunts you, not to relive it with pain, but to write two versions of it. The first version is what the guilt wrote, raw, honest, unforgiving. Let it be completely truthful about what happened and what it cost. The second version is what your wiser self writes, the version that has experienced all of this, understands the context, and can see the fear beneath the action. It includes what you've learned, how you've changed, and what you're choosing now. Read both of them. Notice the difference. One will feel like a locked room, while the other, even if it's still painful, will feel like an open door. Transitioning from guilt to growth. Growth doesn't announce itself loudly. It's subtle and easy to overlook. It's in the pause before you react, when there used to be only reaction. It's in the moment you catch yourself spiraling into shame and choose something gentler instead. It's in the honest conversation you finally had, the boundary you finally held, the truth you finally told. One of the most helpful things you can do on this journey is to keep a growth journal as proof of your progress. It's not a space to get discouraged, Just a simple 5-minute reflection at the end of your day, writing down one thing that shows who you're becoming. Maybe today you recognized the criticism before believing it. Maybe you paused before responding. Maybe you showed kindness to yourself after a tough moment instead of adding another layer of shame. Write it down. These moments might seem insignificant on their own, but when gathered over weeks and months, they become the most convincing evidence you can give your nervous system. Proof that you are not who you used to be. Your past doesn't define your whole story, but how you choose to deal with what's ahead, that's entirely your choice. The ritual of release, letting go without forgetting. You can do all the inner work, name the thing, understand the why, challenge the story, and rebuild the narrative and still feel something lingering. It's something that exists not in your thoughts but in your body, a knot in your chest, a clench in your jaw when a memory surfaces, a familiar weight behind your ribs. That's emotional memory. That's where guilt lives when it has nowhere else to go. And to truly release it, not just think your way through, you have to feel your way. You need to let your body be part of the healing. This is where ritual comes into play. I understand that the word ritual might seem unfamiliar or dramatic, but here, a ritual is simply a meaningful act, a deliberate moment that communicates to your body, especially to the nervous system and the part of you holding on too tightly, that it's okay to let go now. It's safe to unclench. One of the most powerful methods is writing a release letter. Find a quiet space, take a deep breath, then write everything, the story, the guilt, the impact, the regret. Let it flow naturally without any filter or editing. Just the raw truth of what you've been carrying and what you're ready to release. And when you're finished writing, don't hide it away. Release it. Burn it safely. Tear it into pieces. Hold it underwater. Bury it. Whatever feels true to you. But be present in your body when you let go. Make the physical act of releasing something part of what you do, not just a decision you make. There's also the stone practice. Find a small stone that fits in your palm. Hold it and breathe. Let it symbolize what you've been carrying. Speak into it quietly or aloud. Tell it what you're ready to put down. Then take it somewhere, water, earth, a forest, or a quiet patch of ground, and give it away. You're not saying it didn't matter, you're saying it mattered, and I've learned what it was meant to teach me. Now, I'm choosing to grow from here. Why we hold on. I want to talk about something important before we proceed, because many people resist letting go even when they desperately want peace. Sometimes, guilt disguises itself as loyalty. If you stop suffering, does that mean you didn't truly care? If you let it go, does that imply you've forgotten what you did or who was hurt? Let me be honest. You don't demonstrate your integrity by staying stuck. You don't honor those you've hurt by refusing to heal. You don't show that you care by living in a self-made prison. You demonstrate integrity through change by presenting yourself differently and recognizing the cost of what happened. You carry that awareness into every decision you make moving forward. That's what caring is, not endless suffering, but growth. Guilt also creates the illusion of control. When you can't change what has already happened, guilt becomes your way of still doing something about it. It feels active. But guilt isn't action, it's a cycle. Genuine responsibility involves movement. True love for those you hurt grows. Guilt repeats itself. Daily practice of release. Letting go isn't just a one-time act. It's something you practice every day. And the good news is, it doesn't need to be complicated. Your breath is always accessible to you. When a memory surfaces and you feel your chest tighten, focus back on your breath. Inhale slowly, hold it briefly, exhale long and audibly through your mouth. Repeat. As you breathe out, imagine the guilt leaving your body. You might whisper to yourself, I release this. I am safe. I am growing. Movement also serves as a form of release. Guilt resides in the body in tense shoulders, shallow breaths, and a heaviness that isn't caused by fatigue. Move your body intentionally. Walk with the awareness that each step releases something. Dance in your kitchen. Stretch. Let your body remember that it can be light. And writing. 5 minutes. Not to spiral, to let go. Write what you're releasing today. One harsh thought. One loop you've been running. Then close the notebook. That's your exhale for the day. Letting go doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you've taken responsibility for it. You've learned from it. You've changed because of it. And now, you're ready to move forward carrying the lesson without the burden. Rebuilding self-worth. Becoming someone you trust again. Rebuilding self-worth after guilt and shame isn't about returning to who you once were. That version of you, no matter how well-meaning, hasn't faced this fire yet. You can't go back, but you don't have to. You need to move forward into a version of yourself that is wiser, more honest, and capable of a deeper, more grounded trust. The core fracture caused by guilt isn't between you and others, it's between you and yourself. You stop trusting your own judgment and question your integrity. Even if others have forgiven you long ago, even if time has eased the memory, there's that quiet voice asking, can I trust myself not to do that again? And here's the honest answer. That trust doesn't come back just because you choose to feel it. It returns because you earn it again from yourself, for yourself, through small, consistent, honest actions. Self-worth isn't built through grand declarations. It's built through small promises kept. You say you'll go for a walk, and you do. You set a boundary, and you uphold it. You speak your truth, even when your voice trembles. You rest when you're tired, instead of punishing yourself with busyness. Each of these moments proves to yourself, I can rely on myself. When they pile up, repeat, and turn into habits, they build the foundation of true self-respect. Living in alignment. One of the most powerful ways to rebuild self-worth is through alignment, when your actions, words, and choices truly reflect the values you claim to hold, not as a performance, not to seek approval, but as a quiet expression of truth. Start by clarifying your values, not the ones that sound impressive or the ones you think you should have, the ones that feel like solid ground. Maybe it's honesty, maybe it's compassion, maybe it's responsibility, courage, or integrity in small moments. Choose 3 to 5. Write them down. Keep them somewhere visible. And each morning, ask yourself, what's one small way I can live out one of these values today? Not perfectly, just intentionally. When you live in alignment, when your outside begins to match your inside, something deep inside starts to change. You no longer need to prove your worth through achievement or approval. Instead, you feel it in the quiet moments of doing what you promised you'd do, in the steadiness of who you are when no one is watching. The self you're becoming. I want to offer you something, not a promise of who you'll be, but a perspective on who you're becoming. You are not the worst thing you've done. You're not the best thing you've done. You are the sum of the choices you keep making and, more importantly, the kind of awareness and intention you bring to those choices now. One practice that can profoundly reshape your inner narrative is writing I am statements, not fantasies, but genuine declarations of who you are becoming, not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, who you truly feel called to become. Maybe you write, I am someone who tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. I am someone who can be trusted. I am someone who meets their own mistakes with honesty rather than shame. I am someone learning to rest without earning it first. These aren't affirmations you say until they feel true. They're commitments, and every day you live them, even imperfectly, even with wobbles, they become more real. There's one more thing I want to mention here, because people seldom do. Allow yourself to embrace joy. If you've carried shame for a long time, joy might feel out of reach, like something you haven't earned yet. It's as if there's still a sentence to finish before you're allowed to feel good. But joy isn't a reward for perfection. It's fuel for staying present. It reminds your body that you're alive, that you're more than what happened, and that life still offers things worth receiving. Let it in again. Start small. A warm morning, music that moves you, laughter you didn't expect. Let yourself feel it without guilt. Healing doesn't mean there's no struggle. It means having the courage to be honest, even when it's hard. And you're doing exactly that right now, in this moment, by choosing to listen to these words. Forgiveness in action, loving others by loving yourself first. Forgiveness isn't just something that quietly stays inside you. When it genuinely takes hold, real forgiveness, not just done or faked, but truly lived, it changes how you move through the world. Here's something that might sound like a cliche until you've actually experienced it from the inside. You cannot love others deeply from a place of unresolved self-hatred. You can love them out of fear because you're desperate for approval. You can love them out of guilt because you're trying to make up for something, but loving from a healed place, that's something different. That creates real presence, and presence is where true connection exists. Guilt quietly and corrosively isolates you. You might be around caring people and still feel distant from all of them, because part of you is hidden, not necessarily your past, but your true self. The unguarded, undefended version of you that's afraid to be fully seen. Self-forgiveness begins to transform that. The wall starts to come down gradually, silently, but genuinely. You stop leading with tension and start showing up with honesty. You carry less weight in your words and your body. People can sense it, even if they can't specify it. There's more space, more ease, more room to be together. The ripple effect. Consider what changes when someone around you truly makes peace with their past. Not that they've become perfect, but that they've stopped performing. They ask honest questions and listen to genuine answers. They can sit with discomfort without feeling the need to fix it right away. They say, "I don't know, and I was wrong," without it costing them everything. That's what self-forgiveness accomplishes in relationships. You stop expecting everyone else to be perfect because you've stopped requiring yourself to be. Conversations deepen. Conflicts become manageable instead of overwhelming. You develop a presence that others can genuinely feel grounded, authentic, not performing. In the relationships that matter most to you with partners, children, and close friends, this shift is important. The person who has done the inner work of forgiving themselves doesn't need to control, be right, or punish others for their mistakes, because they've learned to respond to their own errors without punishment. And sometimes, what your healing offers others is quieter than all of that. Sometimes it's simply this: you become a safe person to be around. You become the kind of person someone can share the truth with, because they can feel that you understand what it means to be imperfect and still trying. Giving what you once needed. One of the most healing things you can do, not immediately, but when you're ready, is to give others what you once desperately needed yourself. Maybe you needed someone to sit with you and listen without judging. Now you are that kind of listener. Maybe you needed someone to tell you, "You're not broken, you're not beyond repair. You don't have to keep suffering." Now, those are the words you gently offer with your full, earned credibility to someone who can't yet believe them for themselves. You don't need to turn this into a mission or a brand. You don't have to stand on any stage. The most meaningful expression of this is found in everyday moments: the conversation with a friend who feels ashamed of something, the colleague who is hard on themselves, the stranger who clearly carries too much. You have something genuine to offer them now, the quiet confidence, based on lived experience, that it's possible to get through this and come out the other side. That's a meaningful gesture. It's one of the most valuable gifts a person can give to another. Your story, especially the parts you most wanted to hide, can act as a bridge instead of a barrier. Only if you allow it, only if you put in the effort. And that's exactly what you're doing right now. The long walk home. We have shared numerous experiences. We identified the thing that's been sitting in the corner of your life for too long, making itself at home during your quiet moments. We examined the voice that has been speaking to you cruelly and called it what it is, a learned pattern, not a truth. We distinguished the fact of what happened from the story you built around it. We questioned what was underneath, what drove it, and what you were trying to survive. We talked about responsibility as something different from punishment, about letting go of what you've held on to, not because it didn't matter, but because you've learned the lesson it was meant to teach you. We discussed building, gradually and quietly, a version of yourself you can truly trust. And we talked about what happens when that healing begins to extend outward into how you love, how you listen, and how you show up. And now I want to say one last thing that I hope you'll remember. Forgiveness isn't a feeling that comes and stays. It's not a door you open once and walk through forever. It's a practice, a daily, quiet, sometimes difficult choice. There will be mornings when guilt resurfaces, and you'll wonder if you've made any progress at all. There will be moments when the inner critic repeats the same old lines, and something inside you will want to believe them. That's not a sign you've failed. That's how deep healing works. It's not a straight path. It spirals. You revisit old ground, but each time you carry more with you, more tools, more gentleness, more confidence that you've been here before and know the way through. I want you to listen to this, and I want you to truly absorb it. The fact that you have been in pain over this, the fact that you care enough to carry this burden, isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of conscience. It shows that you value goodness. Someone for whom integrity matters. Someone who hasn't made peace with the idea of hurting people or betraying their own values. Those are not minor issues. That marks the start of something beautiful, even if it hasn't felt that way for a long time. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. You are not stuck in your lowest moment. You are the person who experienced it, the one here now, choosing to face it with honesty and courage. The one willing to give yourself, maybe for the first time, the same compassion you'd readily offer to someone you love. There's something I want you to say. You don't need to say it out loud right now, but I hope you'll come back to it. I hope you'll find a quiet moment, maybe today or tonight, and say it to yourself, fully, without rushing past it. I'll be honest about what happened. I will acknowledge the hurt it caused. I refuse to keep deceiving myself. But I also will not keep condemning myself. I am allowed to start again. I am allowed to find peace with who I am becoming. I'm not the worst thing I've ever done. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about recalling who you are no matter what happened, no matter the decision, no matter the burden, despite everything, and remembering who you are, your capacity for honesty, growth, love, and genuine repair is the foundation of everything. You are never beyond healing. You never were. Take good care of yourself. You really deserve this.